watching East Tennessee's first and only year-round sports talk show on television. This is The Sports Source with your host, John Pennington.
Good Sunday morning and welcome into The Sports Source. Happy to have you with us today. We got a lot of stuff to talk about. Tennessee kicking off fall practice. You had the revolving door in the football offices spin again with another exit. And Preston Williams, the hotshot receiver, having to retake his ACT. We'll talk about that. A lot of stuff coming up. Let's go ahead and get right into it. First segment of our show brought to you by Phil Cobble, Fine Homes and Land. I'd like to get an extra 5 or 10% on the sale of your home. Phil Cobble and his team know how to do it. Studies show that an interior designer staging your home before an open house can earn you as much as 5 to 10% more than you would have gotten without it. And guess who's got an interior designer on staff just to stage your open house? Phil Cobble, Fine Homes and Land. More than $300 million in property sales over the last 30 plus years. All right, here's what we got coming up on the show. The top 25 for Tennessee, that sounds good, but 7-5, that doesn't necessarily sound good. Which games are okay losses, and that's not a play on Oklahoma. But we'll look at Tennessee's schedule. Which ones would be acceptable losses? Williams' ACT situation, as I mentioned, that'll be coming up, and then a reminder of General Neyland. One of his star tailbacks passed away this week, and I want to show you something that he gave to me 2 decades ago. And finally, Jimmy Hyams comes up in our next segment with these guys. Bob Hodge, freelance contributor to the Knoxville News Sentinel. Mike Strange, regular contributor to the Knoxville News Sentinel, columnist there, and does radio on 990 and 99.1. And right there, Chuck Cavallari, Sketcher Sports. And also, you're doing some radio on 1180.
Yes, sir.
All right. Guys, appreciate you all being here. Practice opens for Tennessee on Tuesday. You had a lot of guys injured this spring. There are a lot of people missing from spring practice. There are 2 ways of handling this come fall practice. You take it easy, pull back a little bit, not quite as much hitting. Gary Pinkel did that a few years ago. His team went 7-1, won the East. Or you could do it and it not work if you pull back. Mark Richt tried it a few years ago. When he had injuries the previous year, he came back the next season and says, we're going to lighten up on some of the hitting. And what happened was they went 6-7, his only losing season. He said, I'm never doing that again. So my question, you can either ease up on the hitting or you can just do what you normally do. Bob, I'll start with you. What do you do?
You do what you normally do, and I think even more so because of the situation Tennessee's in with this team. This is a young team. You're going to be playing a lot of guys that haven't played on Saturday. And I think if you go into it and you don't get them acclimated to the hitting that they're going to find in the SEC, college football in general, I think you could make a really big mistake. And I know you've got injury concerns, but at the same time, I think you've got to get these guys as ready as they can to play games. And I don't think you do that by taking inexperienced players and not letting them get acclimated to the hitting before the season starts.
All right, guys.
Bob's a football coach. I'm not going to argue with him on that. No, I agree. Maybe some guys you'd be more careful with, but a guy like Darian Kirkland, who's going to play middle linebacker, I mean, is there a more physical position on the field than middle linebacker? So he's got to get in there and hit.
Chuck, your thoughts?
Well, you're not playing flag football. I mean, if you were playing flag football, it'd be different. I think you do what you normally do, like Bob was saying. And then if you do start having some injuries, maybe you adjust a little bit then. But starting out, I think you just got to go. And that's like Tennessee's psyche. Butch Jones preaches, we want to be the more physical team on the field. You don't do that by pulling back on something like that in practice.
And I think that's the other part of it. I mean, I think these guys want to play football, and they're obviously good football players. And you get excited about hitting. You get excited about getting out there and getting physical. Yeah, eventually you want it to be against the other guy. Yeah. But if the only thing you have is a teammate, I think that really kind of gets you in your head going too and gets you more excited about all the work you've got to do.
I think Gary Pinkel's approach a couple of years ago was the exception to the rule. You know, he went on, his team went 7. I think you're much more likely to go the Georgia route when they went 6-7 if you don't start hitting and you don't do your normal stuff. And here's the other thing, and we've seen this. Go back to Justin Hunter when he was at UT and his injury at Florida. Nobody touched him. So you can have injuries in the fall camp where a guy just makes a cut.
Yeah.
You know,
well,
ankle sprain, tears a knee. So I don't think you pull back on hitting for fear of injury. Now, go ahead. I'll let you go.
I was just going to say, look what happened in the NFL back in the spring. A couple of high draft picks got injured and it was
Yeah.
virtually non-contact
Right.
stuff. It was putting your leg in the ground and something gives way. So I agree with you there. Just because you hit doesn't mean you get hurt.
What about Jalen Hurd? You got a guy with a history of shoulder injuries. He had shoulder injury last year. You don't have a ton of running backs. I mean, it's going to be the Hurd and Kamara show. You're going to have. You hope you can get some guys in there as well to get behind those, but those are your two main dogs. What do you do with Jalen Hurd this fall?
I think there's some guys you know what they can do, and I'm looking more for depth at that position than I'm looking for what Jalen Hurd can do. And with it being such a long season, for a lot of these guys, especially in the SEC, hey, let's find the number 2, 3, and a number 4 guy there.
I think that's a good point. I think you know what Jalen Hurd can do. You know he's going to be physical.
And I think running backs are a little bit of an exception to the rule about the hitting thing too, because running backs only have so much of a shelf life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think if you wear him out, so yeah, you pull back on him. But I still don't think you pull back to the point where when he goes out there against Bowling Green, that's the first time he's really getting hit at full speed.
You don't want to have half your starters on offense out there in green jerseys, but still you want to be smart about it.
He would be, of all the guys, you usually throw the green jerseys on the quarterback, or now the smoky gray jerseys on the quarterback, I guess. But he would be the one guy that I would have in a gray jersey for not the entire fall camp, but he would be the one I would be most leery of, simply because it's not a leg injury, it's shoulders, and that's where you're going to be taking hits. When you're getting hit by linebackers and everything, you're going to be hitting those shoulders. You've got a limited shelf life. You've only got so many hits in you. He's one guy I would pull back a little bit with.
And no matter which way you go, somebody's going to get hurt in August. It's going to happen.
Yeah, it does. Let me ask you this: a couple of newcomers. Who are you more interested to find out about in the month of August? Drew Richmond coming in offensive line, so hyped. Khalil McKenzie coming in defensive line, so hyped. Hadn't played much football in the last year due to an injury and school transfer stuff. Who's more interesting? Which is the more interesting story for you guys, Drew Richmond or Khalil McKenzie?
I think Butch Jones has already answered that by saying Khalil McKenzie and Shy Tuttle both need to produce and be good players. I mean, I think they both are, to answer your question, but I think Butch Jones is already pointing towards McKenzie.
I'm going to go with McKenzie because I've just heard so much about him that he's up there in that one of the most highly ranked signees. I mean, he's not just a 5-star. He's big time, and you hear that he's just a freak.
I would say, let's see if you agree.
Richmond.
I'd go Richmond because bigger position of need on your offensive line.
Your offensive line last year was so bad at times. It got a little bit better, got a little bit worse. He looks like the kind of freshman that can come in and help you immediately. I mean, he's got the size and the strength. I mean, you talk about a freaky-looking kid. Drew Richmond is huge. He's strong. So I think you've got defensive linemen that if McKenzie comes in and he's not ready to go, you're all right. I think Drew Richmond needs to be ready to go and at least be on that 2 deep when the season starts.
I have a lot of faith in Steve Stripling from what we've seen the last couple of years. He's managed to get some good production out of that defensive line. You've got some players there. Obviously, you want McKenzie to step forward. But I think you're going to be – I would put more – if you made me put money on defensive line or offensive line right now, it's going on the defensive line. And for that reason, Drew Richmond is the guy I'm more interested in seeing here in August. When we come back, Jimmy Hyams joins us. We're going to talk about that revolving door we talked about last week because it's kept on spinning. Kyle Oliver out. We'll talk about the Charles Mosley discipline being handled internally. More. Come on back on the Sports Source.
Quality, quick. Trust Fast Frame.